Hello and welcome back to my channel. Hi, hello, how are you? How has your week been? I am very excited to film this video. Today I'm going to be tier ranking every book I have ever rated 5 stars. So I got back into reading in the spring of 2022, so about 3 years ago. So in 2022 I read 30 books, in 2023 I read 70 books, in 2024 I read 112 books, and so far this year I have read 29 books for a total of 241 books that I have read since I got back into reading. And out of the 241 books that I have read in the past 4 years, I guess, 4 calendar years, I have rated 54 books 5 stars. Obviously, some of those I read really early on in my reading journey, and they probably are not still 5 stars. Let us go through all 54 books and see how they stack up today. So I've got 5 tiers. I've got I wish I could lose my memory and reread these books. This is like the top tier, like my favorite books of all time. I would willingly give up my memory to be able to reread these books for the first time again. I have a valid 5 stars, okay? It's like, it still lives up to its 5 stars. If I reread it today, I would still rate it 5 stars. Nostalgia keeps it a 5 star. So, you know, sometimes there are books where if you reread them today, they wouldn't necessarily be a 5 stars, but it's the whole atmosphere and the vibes of when you first read it that keeps it at a 5 stars. I've changed. I wouldn't necessarily rate this a 5 stars today, and nostalgia doesn't keep it a 5 stars. And then the last tier is, what was I thinking? Like, in no way does this book rate 5 stars for me today, and I severely wonder what it was that I was thinking when I read this book and rated it a 5 star. What's funny is when I was collecting all of the photos for these books, I realized that there are books that I consider to be 5 stars that I didn't rate a 5 stars on Goodreads. First, we have Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This series means so much to me. I feel like I have to put it in I wish I could lose my memory and reread it, because do we just go ahead and put the whole series in there? I feel like yes. I just recently reread this series and I absolutely loved it. I have 2 editions of the first 5 books. I own all of the books on DVD, and my family just recently went to Universal over spring break, and they brought me back these cutie little editions of some of the like supplemental books that J.K. Rowling has written, like Quidditch Through the Ages, The Tales of Beedle the Bard, and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and it's just so cute, and I absolutely love Harry Potter. Next, we have The Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. I feel like I'm gonna put these in a valid 5 stars. Well, see, I don't want to just like end up putting all of these in like I wish I could lose my memory to reread these again. Like, these books were like the first ones that I read when I got back into reading that like absolutely like blew my mind. But I think we're gonna put the whole trilogy in a valid 5 stars. Girl Online by Zoe Sugg. We're just gonna put this in I've changed. Obviously, I feel like I don't even have to say that this one was a 5 stars before I like really got back into reading. This was back in like 2015, 2014 that I read that. So we'll just say I've changed. The Hunger Games series. We're just gonna go ahead and put all 5 of them in I wish I could read this again for the first time, because that is how I feel. I especially would love to reread The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes for the first time, because when I read that book for the first time, I like wasn't really into reading, and I didn't appreciate the book for what it was. I actually didn't really like it the first time I read it. I recently reread it, obviously had a very different opinion, but I just didn't understand it. My little pea brain was too small to fully comprehend the masterpiece that that book is. Next, I see we have part of the Inheritance Game series. We're gonna do it again, okay? It has to be a I wish I could lose my memory and reread it again for the first time, because I am not kidding when I say that I finished reading The Final Gambit on a plane and I literally started crying. Not because the book was sad, but because I was just so mind blown at the way that Jennifer Lynn Barnes connected the very last page of The Final Gambit to the very first page of the Inheritance Games, that my little pea brain was just too overwhelmed that I just had to cry about it. Too many emotions to keep inside. Beach Read by Emily Henry. I feel like we're gonna put this in a valid 5 stars. It's actually been quite a while since I read this book. It's been almost 2 years since I've read it. And still, at the time that I read this, it was right at the beginning of when I started my channel. And I feel like even since then, my reading taste, my reading comprehension has changed so much. But it's definitely not. I wish I could lose my memory to reread this book. The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I feel like we're gonna put it at I've changed. Do still think that the book is really good. However, I do not think it is like revolutionary like I thought it was when I read it. Run Rose Run by Dolly Parton. We're gonna put it at a valid 5 stars. Definitely do not wish to lose my memory to reread it again. However, I have listened to this book 3 times and every time I'm like, oh, this is so good, 5 stars. So it definitely has earned its ranking of 5 stars. The Legacy by Elle Kennedy. We're gonna put this in What Was I Thinking? This is the like 5th and final book in her off-campus series, which was like her first like super well-known hockey romance series. Since I rated this book a 5 stars, I decided to go back and do a reread of the off-campus series, and I DNF'd the deal about 20% of the way through because I could not stand the language that the male main characters were using to describe other women besides their girl. Found it very degrading, very disrespectful, and decided I couldn't go any further. The fact that I rated a book in that series of 5 stars, I'm like, are you okay? Were you like on something when you did that? Because that's not a 5 stars. Okay, next we got Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I feel like this one, nostalgia keeps it at 5 stars. It's been so long since I've read this, but I just have such fond memories of reading this. I don't know. I just feel like nostalgia keeps it at 5 stars. It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I read this book back in 2022, one of the 30 books that I read that year. I think I'm gonna put that in What Was I Thinking? What was I thinking? I absolutely despised It Ends With Us. And that was like before it became like kind of like the trend to hate on that book. I hated it the first time I read it, but then I pre-ordered It Starts With Us. I gave it 5 stars. No, that's What Was I Thinking? Nora Goes Off Script. I just read this book. We're gonna put it in valid 5 stars because I wouldn't sacrifice my memories to reread it again for the first time, but I did absolutely love it when I read it. So valid 5 stars. Happy Place by Emily Henry. This book, valid 5 stars. I feel like if I were to read this book now, it would absolutely wreck me because I'm definitely in a very different place of life than I was when I first read this book. When I first read this book, I still had a year left of school in college, and I feel like now that I've graduated and I'm like separated from all of my friends, I feel like this book would really absolutely wreck me to my core. Maybe if I read it now, it would become I wish I could go back and reread it again for the first time, but it's not. Fourth Wing. We're gonna put it in I wish I could lose my memory and reread this again for the first time. I finished this book, no joke, and immediately like turned back to page 1 and started rereading it. This book put me in such a book hangover that I didn't know what to do with myself. Rebecca Yarros, I still haven't forgiven you for that. 12th Night by Alexine Farrell-Fulmuth. I feel like we're gonna say nostalgia keeps it at a 5 stars. Because the reason why I loved this book so much was because it's a retelling of the same story that She's the Man is based off of, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. And I thought it was like so good when I read it. I read it in like one sitting, but I don't know, I just feel like it wouldn't really be like a 5 stars. Like it wouldn't be too different. Like I feel like it'd be like a 4.5, a 4.75 if I read it now. So not too different, but I think nostalgia keeps it at 5 stars. Kristen Hanna's The Women. This book wrecked me. We're gonna put it at a valid 5 stars. Reading this book and realizing that for so many women, the events of this book are a reality is just gut-wrenching to think about. If you have not read any Kristen Hanna books, you definitely should, okay? She's an incredible author, and I can't. The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy, another what was I thinking? I remember thinking when I rated this book a 5 stars that a reason why I enjoyed it so much was because it was one of the first romance books that I read that didn't have a 3rd act breakup. However, I have since culminated my reading habits to not really read so much spice, and this book is like ghost pepper spicy, so no. Finale by Stephanie Garber, the 3rd book in the Caraval trilogy. We're gonna put it at a valid 5 stars. I won't say like I wish I could forget it and reread it. Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This book is a I wish I could forget it and reread it. This is a novella. This novella had no business being this good and evoking that much emotion in me, but I'm not kidding when I say I was reading it in my grandma's office. And my grandma already thinks I read too much anyways, so it definitely didn't help my case when I started bawling crying about literal words on paper. A Court of Wings and Ruin. Let's just go ahead and give it what it deserves, which is, I wish I could erase it from my memory and reread it. This is my favorite book so far in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I have not yet finished the series, but I do think that this one is going to be my favorite. It is my favorite over Asimov. Don't hurt me, okay? It's just the truth. The ending of the book, the last 50 pages, it took me so long to finish those because I could not read the pages because I would start crying, put the book down, gather myself, clear the tears from my eyes, pick the book back up, read 2 paragraphs, immediate tears again, couldn't read the page. This, I think, was the first time I'd ever actually ugly cried at a book. This wasn't the first time a book had ever made me cry, but ugly cry. This book holds that record. Funny story. You know what? This one we're gonna put in, I wish I could erase it from my memory and reread it. I've never related to a book character as much as I related to Daphne. I am a firm believer that every girl has like a specific Emily Henry character that they relate to the most, and mine is definitely Daphne. I had never felt so called out by a book before than when I read Funny Story. I was like, oh, I've never seen my insecurities written down on paper like that before. The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Nostalgia keeps it at a 5 stars. The books are so short, which probably is why the Chronicles of Narnia are some of the best book adaptations ever. The books are so short, there's not much that they had to cut out in order to make the movie. Okay, except for the 3rd one. The 3rd movie, that's not very good. Redeeming Love, a valid 5 stars. I just recently read this book in November. Yeah, it was a heart-wrenching book to read. I will be reading it again sometime in my lifetime. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I feel like we're gonna put this in a valid 5 stars, which is funny because I put the novella that comes after this in I wish I could reread it again for the first time. I've read a lot of books since I read this book a year ago. You know, I've read a lot of books that I absolutely loved, read a lot of books I hated, and I feel like this is a valid 5 stars. Waterfall and Cascade from the River of Time series. Oh, and there's Torrent. We're gonna put these, all 3 of these, in I wish I could reread again for the first time. These books had no business being as good as they were. I loved these books so much for like no reason. And I never hear anybody talk about them, but I talk about them a lot. If you loved Magic Tree House as a kid, you should read these books because it's about these 2 sisters who go back in time to medieval Italy and try to survive and fit in so that nobody thinks that they are a witch because they traveled through time. The Selection series. I don't know because this series had me in an absolute chokehold when I first read it, I guess 2 years ago now. So much so that I've been dying to reread them since I finished them the first time. How crazy is that I'd only read this book series for the first time 2 years ago? I don't know where to put them. I feel like the hesitation warrants them being in a valid 5 stars. I feel like if I wanted to put them in, I wish I could reread them again for the first time, then I would have already done that. Don't be surprised if you see a selection reading vlog coming soon, because I so desperately want to reread those books. Oh gosh, I have a problem. A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. We're gonna put it in I've changed. Honestly, I feel like the reason why I gave this book a 5 stars was because so many people had told me the book was a 5 stars, and I am very influenced by other people's opinions, unfortunately. And so I feel like when people tell me that a book is gonna be so good, I feel like that influences my opinion of the book, or what I say I felt about the book. And so honestly, after having read A Court of Wings and Ruin, I am not sure that A Court of Mist and Fury is a 5-star book for me. But that would mean it'd be like a 4.5 stars, a 4.75 stars. Not anything like drastically different, but just not 5 stars. The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, don't hate me. We're putting this in What Was I Thinking? Because the only reason we're putting it in What Was I Thinking was because I knew that this book was not a 5 stars when I gave it a 5 stars. The only reason I rated it a 5 stars was because at the time I was filming a how many books can I read until I get a 5 stars, and I needed the video to be finished. And I'd been hyping up The Naturals so much that I just decided that everyone would believe it if I gave it a 5 stars. I lied to you. That video is a scam, because I knew that The Naturals was not a 5 stars when I finished the video and said, oh my gosh, it's a 5 stars. I was desperately trying to finish that video so I could get started on my Bookmas content, and so I just pretended that The Naturals was a 5 stars. I did really enjoy the book, okay? 4 stars, maybe 3.75 stars. We're just putting it down there because I knew that it wasn't a 5 stars when I gave it a 5 stars. Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I feel like this one, we're gonna put it at Nostalgia Keeps It a 5 stars. I've read a lot of books since I read this, and I feel like Nostalgia was keeping it a 5 stars even when I read it the first time. Like nostalgia for reading Fourth Wing and loving that so much that I really wanted to love Iron Flame as much as I did Fourth Wing, but I didn't. So I'm gonna say Nostalgia Keeps It a 5 stars. Beyond Ivy Walls by Rachel Fordham. Valid 5 stars. Loved this book. It was so cute. I had such a fun time reading it. Read it in one sitting. I adored it. I adored it. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it was so cute. I loved it, and I got my mom to read it. Counting Miracles by Nicholas Sparks. We're gonna put it at a valid 5 stars. This book was heartbreaking. It was not what I was expecting going into it, because the only other book that I had read by Nicholas Sparks at this time was A Walk to Remember. Not gonna lie, didn't really care for A Walk to Remember. Don't smite me, okay? I'm sorry. But I really had low expectations going into this book. My mom picked it out for me in my Can My Mama Choose 5-star books for me. I was so pleasantly surprised by it, and I loved it so much that I was like, here mom, your turn, you get to read it now. We are down to the final 2 books. Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. We're gonna give that a valid 5 stars. This book I was not expecting to love as much as I did. This is the final book in her like Hollywood series that includes like Daisy Jones and the Six, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, and Carrie Soto Is Back. And I had read all of the other 3 books in the series before I read this one, and I honestly didn't particularly like any of them. They all had tropes that I just like can't get behind in any sort of book. And so I had very low expectations going into this book, but imagine my surprise when I came out and I'm like, I think this is a 5 stars. I loved this book, and I genuinely like think about this book several times a week, which I can't say for most of the books that I read. It was a very surprising 5 stars. And the last book is Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. We're gonna say Nostalgia Keeps It at 5 stars because I've since heard this book described as a Wattpad book. I very much agree. However, I spent a majority of my formative years living on Wattpad, so I feel like even in the moment, nostalgia was what made it a 5 stars. But that is all of the books that I have ever rated a 5 stars, which the fact that I've rated about a 1/4 of the books that I've read in the past 4 years of 5 stars is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy to look at this and think of how long it took me to find a 5 stars when I first started reading. The first book that I read when I got back into reading was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I read that in March of 2022. And I did not find a 5-star book until It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, which I read in like September, October of 2022. And with the rate at which I rate books 5 stars, the fact that it took me that long to find a 5 stars is kind of crazy because I feel like I rate every other book a 5 star. Out of the 51 books that I rated a 5 star, 22 of them, almost half, are I wish I could lose my memory again and reread it. 17 valid 5 stars, 5 nostalgia keeps it at 5 stars, 3 I've changed, and 4 what was I thinking. There we have it, y'all. There was me tier ranking every book that I have ever rated a 5 stars. That was fun and interesting, and honestly, there weren't as many books that I probably would rate differently now as I thought there were going to be. Just because with how many books that I rate a 5 stars, sometimes I feel like I am not really like being true to what I think about the book with how freely I give out 5 stars to books. The fact that I only had 12 where I would say it probably wouldn't be a 5 stars if I reread it today is a lot more than I thought it was gonna be. That is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you enjoy this type of content. I had a lot of fun filming this video, so I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And comment down below your absolute most favorite book that you have ever read. But don't ask me to tell you what mine would be because I couldn't choose. And subscribe to my channel for more bookish content in the future. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week and I will see you guys next time. Bye.